good things about Spock's world in the past. So when I saw it in the local used bookstore with the idea in the back of my mind that I might be starting this channel, I picked it up, and I was not disappointed. Spock's world is almost 2 books in one. There's the main narrative surrounding Sarek, Spock, Kirk, and McCoy attempting to sway Vulcan opinion away from a proposed secession from the Federation. What? We'll get into that. The rest of the crew appear briefly, but the focus is on these 4, with McCoy receiving a surprising amount to do, especially since it's in a non-medical capacity. It's certainly within reason that Sarek would appear in a public forum on the topic at hand, and maybe Spock too, and Kirk and McCoy are on hand to testify for the human side, and the captain has to have his big speech at the end, of course. But McCoy has the best speech. He's kind of the stealth MVP of the story. He does a lot of the cloak and dagger investigating and has a large role in uncovering the mystery of why the secessionist movement is happening. But interesting as that plot is, it's not what makes this book special. No, you didn't come here for the plot, you came here for the world building. Because woven between these regular chapters are an exploration from the creation of the universe to the early days of Sarek's career of Vulcan's history. Before this book was released in 1988, Star Trek had barely scratched the surface of Vulcan's culture.
Let me alone!
Fans at the time were anxious for an exploration into how Vulcan became the bastion of logic they know and love, and the book delves deeply into this. The world building is likely the primary reason why most people would want to read this book. So this was the first of Diane Duane's books that I've read, and it's led me to seek out more of her work. In fact, I already reviewed another one of her Trek books, The Wounded Sky. The link is downstairs. Anyway, this book contains some of the most beautiful writing I've experienced in quite a while. If you're enjoying this video, why not buy my book? Flight of the Pangolin is the story of an intrepid group of heroes who decide to exit the solar system over the objections of an isolationist faction. There's actually a lot more going on than that. There's space pirates, a giant spider for no reason, all kinds of other things. Buy it now online wherever you buy books or at our website, www.thepangolinrepublic.com. You can also get fun t-shirts and random other stuff if you want. I certainly am not insane enough to have read every Trek novel, but I have read a bunch in my day, and this one stands out in the prose category. Just an absolute pleasure to read. Speaking of which, that main plot with Vulcan mulling a decision to secede from the Federation might as well be called what it really is, Vulcan cutting ties with Earth. For a race so ruled by logic and mastery of emotion, with the guiding principle of Edic, infinite dimensions and infinite combinations, why would they suddenly choose to turn their back on the government they helped found and display these uncharacteristically isolationist and, at times in the book, straight-up racist tendencies? I won't get into spoilers here, but it's clear Duane understands politics in a way that I can only call prescient, because the book is probably more topical in the current political climate than when it was written. The characterizations in the book are great. Rarely was there a line of dialogue that sounded false coming out of the mouth of one of our heroes. I think it's important to note, as the book observes multiple times throughout, that Vulcans have emotions, very strong emotions, in fact, and are constantly expending effort in mastery of them. It's something to remember when you read it, and sometimes Vulcans actually display emotions. I think sometimes people don't get that right. They think that Vulcans don't have emotions. They have them, they control them. I don't need to tell you this if you're watching this video and you know all about Vulcans, but just in case. There's also the observation that logic, like any guiding principle, can be perverted to other means, and that vigilance against such corruption is necessary. to maintain order in civilization. So there aren't a ton of secondary characters, but T'Pau, no, the Vulcan T'Pau. Thank you. T'Pau, Amanda Grayson, and Spock's ex-girlfriend T'Pring all make prominent appearances. We learn here that T'Pau, Spock, and Sarek are all direct descendants of Surak, which I think is a bit much, but whatever, they're exceptional people. Speaking of exceptional people, did you know that Amanda Grayson was one of the inventors of the Universal Translator? The story ties that work in thematically, too. Very deft work by Diane Duane. Also, the Hamalki glass spider named Kastilk from The Wounded Sky. If you remember my discussion of The Wounded Sky, link is downstairs. She also makes a return appearance and steals every scene she's in, of course, which is the last time we saw her. Great character. There are multiple references in the book to the Enterprise's BBS, or Bulletin Board System, which is a hilariously dated reference, and some other computer-based technical jargon that places the writing firmly in the 80s. As is science fiction tradition, it's hard to extrapolate the future from the current day, but it makes for some fun references / Easter eggs for people. If the kids read it now, they would probably just think it's the ship's form of social media and not give it a second thought. So it still works. I don't like to give ratings on these books, but I will say this. Overall, this might just be the best Star Trek book I've ever read. I highly recommend it, especially if you're at all interested in the history of Vulcan, but also if you just like books that are a good read. If you're a big fan of Star Trek but haven't read the books, this could be an interesting place to start, but don't expect the quality of every book to be this high. Spock's World isn't just a high watermark for Star Trek books. I think it's a great achievement for books in general. So definitely check it out. So that's all I've got for this time. Stay tuned for another episode of Mike's Book Report, where I discuss another book that you haven't thought about in decades.